Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I have a nice quick easy tutorial for you today. Back before Christmas I did a tutorial on how to build and install the doors into the homestead house. And at the end of that tutorial I showed some footage of the screen door that I added to the outside of the house. I did not in that tutorial provide instructions on how to build that screen door. I did get a request though from a subscriber to show how I made that door. So in today's video, that's what we're going to be doing, is we're going to build the screen door for the outside of the house. So we'll have a quick peek at what we'll need for the project and then we'll get started. If you haven't already made the frame that the door sits in, I would recommend making that out of 3/32 of an inch plywood. It's a little bit thicker and tends to stand up just a little bit better. But the door itself is all going to be made out of this 1/16 of an inch, which is about 1.6 millimeters in width. You will also need something for your screen. So what I've used is this paint settlement screen bag. Now this is used if you have maybe some older paint and you can strain your paint through it. You can get this probably any paint store. I'm pretty sure we got it at a Home Depot or a Rona or something similar to that. But it's just fine enough to make a nice screen in miniature size. You will of course need some glue, and then depending on whether or not you're going to paint it or stain it, you'll need some of that. We're going to be using stick pins for the hinges. We're going to be doing pin hinges, so you'll need some straight pins or dressmaker pins. And then you'll also need something for a handle. Now I found these on Etsy. Julie Warren from Little Bits and Pieces has a great Etsy store. She is located in the UK. So for my UK subscribers, it's nice and easy for you. Probably wouldn't cost you too much for shipping. But even here to ship to Canada, it was actually very reasonably priced, and I order from her quite a bit. And then, of course, our tools will need your ruler, paintbrush for your stain or your paint, your craft knife, a nice sharp pencil, a pair of scissors for the netting, and then you'll also need to be drilling a few holes. So I use this little hand drill, and I've got about I would say that's 0.6 millimeter drill bit in it. It's the same width as the straight pins. And that's pretty much all you need for this build. So let's get started making that screen door. So I recently did a video on how I installed the interior and the one exterior door on my homestead house. And if you are at the stage where you need to also create the frame, I would recommend that you go back and watch that video so that you can see how I measured these pieces based on the size of the hole that I cut in the wall. I will put a link to that video in the description below on this video so that you have easy access to do that. Second thing is the size of the hole that I'm using for this tutorial is 179 millimeters high by 67.5 millimeters across. If you have cut the hole in your wall a different size, you will have to make allowances for that in the cutting instructions that I've given you. So I'm going to quickly put this frame together because I do need it in order to show you how to attach the screen door. But I'm not going to go into a ton of detail because the other video is there. All right, so let's get started. First thing you'll need to do for that frame is you need to drill out a couple of holes for your pin hinges. So make a decision on what side of the doorway you want the screen door to swing out on, and then we're going to go ahead and drill in. So I have measured in and marked off 4 millimeters from the end and 1.5 millimeters from the top. And I've placed a little dot there. Hopefully you can see that. And I've made that same measurement on the other piece as well. I'm going to take my hand drill and I'm going to drill down all the way through to the bottom of those pieces. So we'll do the same for the other side. And of course you want to make sure that the holes that you've drilled are both to the same direction and that they are both going to be, when they're standing up, to either the front or the back of the piece, depending on where you're going to put the screen door. So your top piece is going to be the longer piece. So when you put them together, you'll put the longer side piece up underneath the top piece, as opposed to like this. If you do it this way, the measurements I've given you won't work. So you want to go on this side. I've also drilled that hole based on that design as well. So we're just going to take some wood glue and we're going to stand these up and glue them together so that we have a square box. So here's what I mean about lining up the hole that you drilled. This one is on the left side and towards the front. This one also has to be on the left side and towards the front or the top. So we'll go ahead and glue that one on next. These are pieces A and B, by the way. Sorry, I didn't mention that already. All right, so we're going to bring in pieces C, D, and E, and you'll bring in half of the quantity. So because we're going to make 2 of these. So you'll need 2 of piece C, 2 of piece D, and 1 of piece E. I would recommend putting these inside of your frame to make sure that they fit. You can make adjustments if you need to. If they don't, if they're a little bit too long. Like I said, with miniatures, it doesn't take much. Like even a 1/2 millimeter can be the difference between something fitting and not fitting. So I like to lay my pieces inside of the frame just to make sure that they're going to fit. Now, you will probably notice that there is a tiny bit of a gap on the side. That's on purpose. You'll need room to open and close that door. There needs to be enough clearance to be able to do that. It's never going to fit super tight, otherwise you're going to struggle getting the door to open and close. There's also a tiny bit of a gap on the top and the bottom, not a ton, just enough to give it a little bit of clearance. So I think this one is going to fit well. This might be a hair long, but I'll put this piece together first and then I can trim this one down if I need to. All right, let's take that off and let's put this together. So as you can see, my shorter pieces are the ones that go to the end, and then the longer pieces sit inside, just like in the frame where the shorter pieces go to the edge and the longer pieces fit inside. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to glue this together like this. We'll make sure that that one fits, and we need to make 2 of those. For the screen, I'm going to be using this netting that I have. So I'm going to cut out a piece that's just slightly larger than one of these pieces. So the trick to this is to glue it to one side to start, and then to just very gently pull it out so that there's no wrinkles. And I usually do the top piece first, stretch it down to the bottom, and then I'll lift up and do one side and stretch it over to the other. I'm going to weight that down so that nothing starts to warp and that it dries nice and flat. I'll do the middle part next. Because these blocks are so heavy, they'll help to hold the stretch as well while the glue is drying. Once the glue is dry, you can go in now and trim off these edges. I find it's easier with an X-Acto knife to do that, but it's totally up to you. If you have a good pair of sharp scissors, that'll work as well. Just be careful that you're not shaving off part of the frame while you're cutting the netting. Now let's flip it over so that the netting is on the top side. And then we'll take our second piece and we're going to glue it on top. So at the end, when you're done, the netting will be sandwiched between the two pieces of wood. You'll need a little bit more glue, I think, this time, because the glue tends to seep through to the bottom of the netting. So you want to make sure you have enough glue on the top side that it's going to adhere to the back of the other frame. Make sure you're flush on all of your edges. And then either weight it down, or if you don't have anything heavy that you can weight it on, then you can use clamps as well. I'm just going to use my blocks because they're heavy enough. Make sure you get right to the edges because it's the corners that tend to curl if they're going to warp at all. So now that it's together, I'm just again going to do another quick dry fit just to make sure that it fits. Okay, before we install the door with the hinges, I want to paint it. It's just easier to get that done now than to try and do it once it's attached to the frame. If you're going to paint the frame as well, now's a good time to do that as well. So I'm just going to put a little tiny bit of glue on the end. And I'm going to take that pin and I'm going to poke it through just part way, just to get it started, because when you're laying this down flat on the table, it's hard to see where that hole is. Okay. Now I'm going to lay that frame over top of the door. I want to pull this door as close to me as possible because I don't want the hinge to come in the gap in between. So we'll push it in nice and tight, and then we're just going to push that pin into the top of the door. Now you should have enough length in that pin so that when you move this then down to the other side or move it part way down, that you still have enough room that it's going to stay into the door. If you make these pin hinges too short, you may have some trouble keeping them in the hole when you adjust for that little bit of gap that you need to get the door open and closed. So I'm trying to keep that gap even on either side. And now that that one is in, I'm just going to flip it around and we're going to do the other side. Make sure the pin goes in straight as well, otherwise you might miss the door as well. Okay, there we go. So let that dry a little bit, and then as you can see now when this is opened that this door kind of goes back into the frame, and we don't want that. So we're going to add a little stopper on the inside so that that door only opens to the outside and not pushes back through the other way. If you try and push it back the other way, you could end up snapping it off, and we don't want that to happen. So I've got my last little piece, which is piece F, and I've already gone ahead and stained it. And I'm just going to put a bead of glue, and we're going to place it on the side that opens. So we're going to place it in here along this edge of the door frame. We're going to glue it in there. So the trick is to get just the right amount of glue. We don't want so much that it's gaping out everywhere and gluing to things that it shouldn't, but there needs to be enough glue on there to adhere to the wood as well. So take that piece in and we'll push it towards the frame. And then I'm going to lift that up so that this doesn't glue to that stopper piece. So I'm just going to hold that there for 30 or 40 seconds till it adheres, and then we can let it go. And one last little piece of advice. If you're putting in an inside door, like a solid wood door, there should be enough room to do that here, but you have to be aware of how much space you have. So you have to be careful about how wide the wood is or how thick the wood is that you use for the main door. And you also have to be aware of how thick your doorknob is. When I made mine, I had this beautiful little brass doorknobs that I wanted to use, but what I found was they stuck out way too far. And so I had to rethink, and I had to use something much flatter. in order to make it all fit. So that's just something to be aware of if you're planning on putting in the main door there. But that again is all explained in the first video that I did for the wooden doors. So you can go back and have a review of that. The last piece is your door handle. And you'll just glue that to the side of the door, like so. Once the handle is glued on, that's pretty much it. That's the screen door. So that brings us to the end of this little tutorial. I hope you found some value in it. Thank you very much for joining me, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.